Alright. We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome, coaches, parents, players, 80-20 baseball community. So this week I was going to publish the interview I did with Coach David Klein. He's the founder of Speedball and Legend Sports Camps. After a little more thought, and I was thinking it over the last couple days, I'm going to plug in an interview here where I'm going to break down my experience out there this last weekend at my nephew's baseball tournament. I want to share with all of you my observations. Right there, I got up right in the front. I was watching my nephew play. I hadn't seen him play in a long time. I was right there. I watched the tournament being played over there near the Portland area in Oregon. And I want to bring you some of the thoughts and suggestions and tips and strategies that I'm going to, or that I got from the game. And I'll bring you the Coach Klein interview next week. It's a great one. I am definitely excited to roll out that interview. I'm going to roll it out in full next week. So it's going to be an extended, probably almost a 45, 50 minute episode. We're going to get the whole interview in. I'm going to share it all next week with you. So check in next Tuesday for our weekly get together. But I'm going to get in this week into some things. I took notes. I wrote down a lot of thoughts as I was watching these games, this tournament being played. You're talking 10U and 11U. I was thinking about all of you, and I want to share with you the pros, the cons, the positives, the negatives of that experience. First, I read an article on Fangraphs, and some of you are familiar with Fangraphs. I really like Fangraphs. And so I've been a member of Fangraphs for many years, and I really like Fangraphs, although I don't necessarily recommend it for most of you. And I say that because I think that just because it's good doesn't mean it's a good fit. And I don't know if it's a great fit for youth baseball coaches, but what I try to do is I take these articles that they write, typically about the professional game, and I take these really deep dives into statistics and analyzing hitting approaches and pitching and things like that, and pitch repertoire and base running. And I try to deduce from it what we can learn and what we can apply to the youth game and what we can learn from these numbers. And I try to take from that something that I can share with all of you that we can use, like I said, at the youth level to make our teams better, our players better. And an article I read this past week was discussing the Dodgers offense and their approach at the plate. And we talk about hitting approach. I think it's one of the biggest competitive advantages, just sitting there ready to be taken advantage of. You can spend a lot of time teaching the swing until you're long in the tooth, or you can double down on the approach and do some things with the swing here and there, subtle changes or a slower progression with the swing. But if you double down on the approach, that's something I believe can come along a lot faster because it doesn't take physical skill and it's not really breaking a bunch of bad habits physically, which takes some time. It's just about pitch selection, where the pitcher should be, how hard to swing, and that's about it. Where the pitcher should be, less than 2 strikes or with 2 strikes, and how hard to swing depending on the count and the pitch location. There's also play and take, which we talk about, and you can go read all the information on that on the website and go back and listen to those podcasts. So the article on Fangraphs talked about the Dodgers having the second best offense in the major leagues based on run production, and that's really the only stat at the end of the day that matters, scoring runs. So they're number 2 to the Yankees, and the Yankees have just been on fire. And the article showed, or it broke down, some numbers that were very intriguing, and this is something that we can definitely learn from. The Dodgers are not doing very well on pitches down the middle. That's an area of the zone that needs to be taken care of as a hitter. You got to be good middle, the middle of the zone, the heart of the zone. There's only a few players that typically like it lower or higher than the middle of the zone. Typically, most hitters like middle pitches. And so what I think is going on with the Dodgers is I think they're being a little over-selective. And over-selective is, again, against our philosophy here at 80-20 with the hitting approach. What do I mean by over-selective? Going up there with the mindset that we are going to take a lot of pitches. We cannot have our hitters, I'm telling you, this is the biggest mistake that's been going on forever in baseball, and that is teaching hitters to go up there with a predetermined mindset of what pitches, whether they're going to be patient or aggressive. That should not be their mindset going up to hit. And this is something I probably haven't hammered down enough on, and I wanted to bring it to you today. What can we learn from this? And it hit me, I go, the coaches here, the youth coaches, we can learn from this big time. You do not want your play, and this is something ubiquitous through baseball and the baseball community, the coaching community, telling hitters, hey, you got to be aggressive up there or you got to be patient up there. We don't want either of those. We don't want their mindset to be overly aggressive or overly patient. Now stick with me here and I'll explain to you why this makes sense and why this is really the way to go. I think the Dodgers are going up there with the mindset that they need to be patient. They should, in my opinion, all of us should be going up there. Our hitters should be going up there with the mindset that the pitch location will dictate the aggressiveness or the patience. We cannot go up there preset with a default aggressive or non-aggressive mindset as hitters before we've even seen the pitch. Let the pitch dictate the aggressiveness or not. So for example, if a hitter goes up there and there's 4 straight pitches outside of the zone that weren't really anything they could do with, they weren't really even reachable, they're bad pitches, a couple of them bounced, one was up by their eyes and one was 2 feet off the plate. They didn't swing at any of those pitches. They took all 4 and they walked on 4 straight pitches. Does that mean they were patient? Does that mean they were patient up there? No, they could have been very aggressive, but those pitches weren't where they should have been to be aggressive. And also, going up there and being patient and taking pitches right down the middle is not a good approach. Going up there and taking meatball pitches, unless you're in that plan take, which we describe exactly what situations there are specific situations that plan take should apply, but that shouldn't be something overly used. And what I mean by that is you don't want to have hitters going up there and plan take. First off, you never do it with 1 strike or 2 strikes. It's always done with 0 strikes. And there's reasons for that. I lay them out exactly. There's a whole article on the website, 8020baseball.com. This is something I spent years and years and years breaking down, analyzing everybody's philosophy that I've come across all the time. And I hear it all the time, hitters got to be aggressive up there. Yes and no. You're looking for a pitch that you can be aggressive on that gives you a good chance of driving it. A hitter's pitch with less than 2 strikes. You're looking for a pitch that's in the hitting zone for that particular hitter. Most hitting zones overlap. Some vary. Some hitters like to pitch a little more away, some like it a little more in, a little up, a little more down. It depends on the hitter. And the hitter will surely know, and the coach will surely see what the hitting areas are best for each hitter. But typically middle, like these pitches that the Dodgers are not doing very well on. And I have not seen every middle pitch the Dodgers have taken. I'm a big Dodger fan, as most of you know, but I'm a baseball fan, and I want to coach you guys up using something that I just happened to come across on Fangraphs that talked about the Dodgers. They're scoring a ton of runs, and they're not doing anything with that middle pitch. They, in my opinion, are taking too many pitches. Now, it has benefited them because they swing at less pitches outside of the zone than any team in the league. The Dodgers swing at less pitches outside of the zone. That is a statistic you want your team to be the best in the league at. Swinging at fewer pitches outside of the strike zone, outside of the hitting zone, you want that. But you also don't want to be the team that is doing really terrible as a lineup on pitches down the middle. That is not good overall, and that's something that can be fixed really quick with the hitting approach that we talk about, Plan A, which Plan A, Plan 2, and Plan Take aside, but Plan A and Plan 2, the 2 main hitting approaches, 2 main pitch selection approaches that we break down at length here and we preach, those are going to take care of that. You're looking for that pitch in the hitting zone with less than 2 strikes, and I think the Dodgers could get a lot better at that. They should not be going up there patient by default. Let me say it again. Please trust me on this. The pitch location determines the aggressiveness or the patience that the hitter should show. The pitch location, let that dictate the aggressiveness or the patience. Now, hitters should be ready to hit. They should be ready to hit with less than 2 strikes in this particular situation right here. I'm going to say with less than 2 strikes, they should be ready to hit a pitch in their hitting zone. That might be half of the strike zone, a quarter of the strike zone, a third of the strike zone. It's typically the size of a beach ball, depending on the age, or maybe a small hula hoop. You have to teach your hitters to let the pitch location determine their aggressiveness. That is the key. And I don't think I hit on this enough and broke this down, but it hit me when I was reading that article. I go, oh, this is something I really need to break down with the community, the 80-20 baseball community coaches. We do not send hitters up there with the message, hey, you got to be aggressive up there. You got to be aggressive, or you got to be patient. You got to be patient. The message is, with less than 2 strikes, you're looking to crush a pitch, you're looking to drive a line drive with a pitch in your hitting zone. And they'll get to learn their hitting zone through practice, through games. They'll start to know what pitches they can handle, and some of them just inherently, they already know what pitches they can hit and can't hit. And what I mean by hit, meaning they can drive it. They can hit a line drive. They can hit a hard one-hop ground ball through the infield. Maybe a ball into the gap, a hard line drive fly ball into the gap, or maybe a home run. But the pitch is going to dictate their aggressiveness or their patience. It should not be set in their mind before the pitch is delivered. This is massive. This is the biggest determining factor between the great hitters and if you want your hitters to be great. Now, you can work on the swing, and I think working on swings and ironing those out, definitely important, but they need to be swinging at the right pitch. But if we keep telling our hitters to go up there and be aggressive, and that pitcher throws 3 really good pitcher's pitches, or worse, throws pitches outside of the zone, and we have told our hitters to be aggressive, well, you can't fault the hitter for swinging at those pitches. You fault ourselves for telling them to go up there and be aggressive before actually seeing the pitch. The pitch location dictates the aggressiveness or the patience of the hitter. Keep first things first. This philosophy, this message is at the root of our hitting plans. Plan A and Plan 2. Plan A is with less than 2 strikes. Plan 2 is with 2 strikes. It's interesting how much I hear about the hitting approach. The hitting is so hard. Hitting is so difficult. Being a hitter, being on time, making contact. Hitting is one of the hardest things in all of sports to do. And then these same coaches and all the same community turns around and then talks about 14 different hitting approaches or 6 different hitting approaches. It doesn't jive. That doesn't make sense. That just can't be. You have something that's so hard to do successfully, consistently. We got to keep it to the root. And the root is less than 2 strike plan and a 2 strike plan. And then you got your plan take. If in those situations where taking a pitch is beneficial with no strikes. I did tweet about Mookie Betts. The last thing I'll say about this, Mookie Betts is striking out a lot on pitches on the fringes that I'm seeing. And to me, that goes with they're too patient by default. They're too patient by default. They're taking pitches. They're not doing well with pitches down the middle. That doesn't mean they're missing. They might be missing. Typically, it's not a swing issue when they're missing pitches down the middle. If they're scoring a lot of runs and doing well on pitches on the fringes, middle would be like if you broke the strike zone down into 9 squares, right? It would be like that middle square, all right? A rows of, it's like 3 across and 3 down rows of squares, and it was that middle square. That'd be like middle, or just on the fringes of that middle. It can't be a swing issue. If the Dodgers are doing as much damage and scoring as many runs as they are, I mean, they're so far ahead of the next National League team. They're so far ahead of basically everybody but the Yankees in scoring runs. And the Yankees, everybody that follows baseball knows that lineup is that lineup is stacked this year. I mean, that is a lineup, right? These are some lineups for the ages. And the Dodgers are scoring as many runs as everybody but the Yankees, and they're the second to worst team on run production on pitches middle. Second to worst in the league, next to the Oakland A's, who have barely won a game this year. All right, I love the Oakland A's and I love Billy Beane, but they're not doing very good this year. They're literally already been eliminated from the postseason, and it's July. It's not even barely the All-Star break here, and they've been eliminated. And the only team that's worse than the Dodgers on those middle pitches is the A's. It tells you that it's not that, but the Dodgers are scoring a ton of runs. It tells me that their swings are fine. And we all know they got great hitters, that great swings. Turner, Freeman, Betts. These guys are stud hitters. Justin Turner, Will Smith. They got some swings that are pretty to watch. What I'm seeing, and if I was talking to the Dodgers, or if you know somebody that's associated with the Dodgers, you need to send this message to them. They are going up there with a mindset. It's very clear that they are being they're going up there, be patient. No. Go up there, ready to hit a pitch in the hitting zone with less than 2 strikes. And if it's outside of that hitting zone, take it. That's when the patience comes in. The patience or the aggressiveness doesn't happen until that ball is in the air and they can get a clear understanding of where that pitch is going to be relative to their hitting zone and relative to the strike zone. So I thought this message was really, really important to share with all of you. This is a huge competitive advantage. You're going to hear coaches from now until the time where, this is so ingrained in the baseball community to tell hitters to go up there. Hey, you need to be more aggressive. You need to be aggressive first pitch. No. You need to tell them, if you get a meatball first pitch, you better not take it. You better swing if you get a meatball. That's the better way of saying it. If you get a pitch in your hitting zone with less than 2 strikes, you better put a good swing on it. Unless you're in that plan take, which we've talked about, you can break down and see all the breakdown of that whole, what are the examples of when you should be in plan take. Those atypical situations when you want to get a little bit better read on that pitcher, or you have an atypical type of pitcher, you want to see a pitch before you do commit to swinging, and you can see all that on the website. You can listen to those podcast episodes that I talk about that. But coaches, do not send your hitter up there and say, be aggressive here. You need to be aggressive. Or, hey, you need to be more patient. Be patient. That is already built into the approach. That is already a result that will come about if plan A and plan 2 are followed. If a pitcher doesn't throw a good pitch to hit with less than 2 strikes, the hitter becomes a patient hitter. If the pitcher throws a pitch or pitches that are in the hitting zone, that are in that area of the strike zone that the hitter can really hit hard and hit a line drive or do something with, or drive a one-hopper through the infield, or drive something in the gap and really drive something, maybe a home run, like I said before, that's when the hitter becomes aggressive. But notice, the pitch location dictates aggressiveness or patience. This is such a big deal. This is something that the baseball community should be teaching across the board to every single hitter without a doubt, and it's not. Some coaches don't say anything about being aggressive or being patient. Some coaches, there's some coaches, and some of you may never say anything about it. But those coaches that do say it, it's typically, hey, you got to be more aggressive or you got to be more patient. That statement needs to be preceded by, if the pitch is in your hitting zone, you need to be aggressive. And that's with less than 2 strikes. If the pitch is in the strike zone or near the strike zone with 2 strikes, you need to be aggressive. See how I word that differently? So it's a very clear directive to the hitter. I'll tell you what, I was watching my nephew's game the other day and I heard the coach yell out, hey, you got to be aggressive up there. Be aggressive up there. So the first pitch comes in, it's chin high. It might have been nose high on the hitter. And what did the kid do? He swung. He swung his bat as high as he could, physically swing it, and he was under the pitch by about 8 inches. He couldn't even reach the pitch, but his coach said, be aggressive. The coach should have said, if you get a pitch in your hitting zone or a pitch that you think you can drive, swing, be aggressive. Do not take those. Wanted to really hit on this because hitting is something that your team will do next to pitching more than anything in a baseball game. And when players, they just had the draft, they're having the draft actually as we kind of record this, and yesterday and the day before they're having the draft, and they're not going up there and talking about drafting players for all their defensive prowess and how many positions they put. Oh, he catches and plays left field and he can play shortstop. Now, is that valued within the scouting community and baseball? Sure. But you want to get a kid to make the high school team, he's got to hit if he's a position player. If you hit, they'll find a spot for you. If you can hit, they'll find a spot for you. If you want to play past high school, you got to hit. You have to hit. You have to be able to hit. If you want to play pro ball, they're drafting position players based off of can they hit or can they not hit. At the end of the day, that's why they're drafting, and kids get scholarships because they can hit for the most part. There are some kids that are getting opportunities to play at higher levels and in the high school team because they're just so great, especially like at catching. Catching is that one position that's so valuable on defense. That's so valuable, especially in high school and youth baseball and even any level. It's so valuable that they'll overlook the swing a little bit, but you got to be able to hit. And this is such a huge advantage. So I wanted to share this out to you today and break down the hitting approach that we've discussed here at length over the last couple years. But this is a big one. Now, speaking of my nephew's game. So I went over and visited my brother. My nephew was playing a tournament, into the season tournament over there in the Estacada, Oregon area. Man, it was beautiful. We went blueberry. We picked organic blueberries out on the farm. There was a pond. My brother's good friend, their neighbor has a pond. We were lily pads, and we were jumping and swimming in that. It had a zip line. It was a great time over there. It's outside, a little more outside in the farms. It's like the Christmas tree capital of the United States. They send, I think, more Christmas trees out of there than anywhere in the United States. They ship them everywhere across. So if you get a tree from Oregon, there's a good chance it comes from the Estacada region. It's a small little town, but that region, that area outside of Portland to the east, it's a real beautiful area. So I was over there watching my nephew play. The first game had yet to start. It was 9 a.m. I sit down, 9 a.m., sipping my coffee, and I hear the coaches start yelling at each other from across the field. I said, this can't be going on. This is the first game of the entire tournament, and these coaches are already bickering, not discussing politely, not communicating cordially. They were literally talking like 8th grade kids would talk to each other that were having a disagreement and being immature about it. There was a rule that the coaches, there was only going to be one coach outside the dugout and not two. And my nephew's coach, he got upset, but he didn't handle it right. They did have a talk about the rules and the other team's coaches disobeyed. First off, if you agree to a set of rules at 5:30 p.m. the night before the tournament and the first game the next day at 9 o'clock, you sit down and you break those rules, that's on you too. But can we set a better example? Can we walk over to the other coach and just tell him, hey, I'm not saying you got to talk you can give him an earful, but can't you get close to him and just say what you really feel and how you feel and, tell him to get with the program? I wouldn't blow a gasket over it and and not saying that the coach blew a gasket, but he was pretty upset about it. At the end of the day, could you go over and just discuss it so the kids aren't involved? I mean, he was literally yelling with 4 or 5 kids between them, the catcher, the pitcher, a couple of the infielders were between them, a couple of kids around the dugout. It's a bad example of showing kids how adults should talk to each other. We want to get our kids ready to be productive and healthy, respectful members of society. I'm not saying they need to be rollovers and chumps. I'm not saying they need to be going out there and just letting the world roll them over and just not speak up for themselves. What I'm saying is we need to teach them to be able to discuss things or vent the frustrations a little more in a mature manner. And I think the coach should have walked over. He had time. I mean, these little league fields, right? You guys all know these youth baseball fields are not that hard to walk. I mean, you walk across them in 6 seconds. You can literally do a old man stroll in about 6 or 7 seconds and be across. These aren't big baseball fields. And could have got right next to him and just told him how he really felt about that and that it was disrespectful, that he didn't listen to the rules and he could have done that, but it could have been done a lot more low key, right? He doesn't have to get right next to him. Maybe he has a little distance, but yelling it from one dugout to the other dugout was not the answer. From there, it was no better. They were bickering and there was a lot of back and forth. And even after the later game in the afternoon, these coaches were still discussing and bickering about it, and they were still mad at each other like little kids. These are 45-year-old, 50-year-old men acting like little kids out there. And you know who sees that? All the real kids. And they see that. And now they see, well, hey, that's how the adults act. So why can't we? Why not us? All right. Now, for some other things that I saw that we can learn from, bunting too much. So if the hitter for my nephew's team was struggling or has been struggling, the coach has him bunt. But he doesn't have him bunt a drag bunt. He has them square early and essentially sacrifice bunt in non-sacrifice situations because he can't or hasn't shown the consistency to hit. I'm not a fan of this. One, how is a kid going to get better at hitting unless they hit? I do agree with maybe having them do something a little different. How about a drag bunt? In fact, I did see one drag bunt that was phenomenal, right on the line. It was perfect. So drag bunting, if the kid can't hit, I'm a big fan of that. But squaring 7 seconds early, turning the body and putting a bunt down, no. If anything says we're more about winning than player development, this is it. Because sacrifice bunting never, ever, 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 ever got a kid a chance to play at the higher level, whether that's high school, definitely college or pro ball. Sacrifice bunting skills never in the history of baseball have ever got a hitter an opportunity to play at the next level. Defensive skills, we talked about that just a minute ago. Maybe some defensive skills, sure, especially catching, middle infield. Pitching, yeah, and hitting. Definitely not sacrifice bunting and probably not even drag bunting. But in this situation, I would have been much happier to see a drag bunt because that's something I'm a big fan of. I'm a big fan of drag bunting, and I did see a really good drag bunt. So the coach would have the players bunt the 2 or 3 kids that have been struggling. It was just not a good approach, in my opinion. I did see a couple things that were awesome. The umpire corrected a ball strike call. The umpire called a ball, and he reversed it to a strike, and I like that. That, to me, was really good. Now, it does say that the umpire is probably a little premature, looking to call the pitch a little faster. Sometimes our eyes and our brain can, if you've ever umpired, some of you have umpired, I've umpired before. Sometimes with what we're sensing, we see the pitch coming in and we sense it's going to be a ball, but it does something at the end, it kind of breaks in, or we see a play that's developing and we're like, he's going to be out or he's going to be safe, and then it doesn't come to be. Something happens where it changes, but our mind is kind of set. So he called it a ball and he was calling pitches a little quickly, but that's fine. But he did reverse it to a strike call, and that was awesome to see the umpire correct his call. In fact, a couple of the parents really spoke out and said, that's awesome, good for you. Like, he's like, hey, my bad, hey, it was a strike. I called it a ball, I'm sorry, it was a strike. Really cool to see that. Hitters, face and cheek shields. I was surprised only a few of the players had the face cheek shield. Even just that part that comes off their front side cheek, I really think that's something that should be worn. You're talking about a piece of equipment that couldn't cost more than $10, $15, $5. Definitely think they should have that face cheek shield. I'm not about bubble wrapping our kids by any means, but protecting their teeth, protecting the face with a baseball coming in. Yeah, I'm a big fan of that because I've seen teeth on the ground multiple times in my life, and it's not pretty. I've seen many people get hit in the face, whether it's a ball or a bat, and it's not pretty. And it's a lot of time at the hospital, and there's a lot of recovery from that and some serious dental surgery. It's just not worth it. Not with the teeth. The teeth are a little bit different. The face, the eyes, the cheeks, just not worth it. So I think that getting that face shield in there, big deal. I'd put that on every helmet. I would make it a requirement, and some leagues are making it a requirement. Softball has had the full cage thing. I mean, if softball's doing it full cages, baseball pitches are probably a lot more errant on average than softball pitches. A parent was yelling at the scorekeeper to add a run that hadn't been added 10 seconds after the kid scored. 10 seconds. Not at the end of the inning, not a minute later, not even a batter later, literally 10 seconds. And that is after he walked 50 feet from his seat. So I'm guessing he got up. I didn't see him get up, but I was sitting by the scorekeeper and I heard him say, hey, the score is 13, not 12, 13. Yeah, it was a high scoring game. The final score on the first one was 16-13. Actually, it was fun to watch. I liked that, a lot of action. But nonetheless, this dad was watching so close and he couldn't, he had to be over there to tell the scorekeeper, who's not associated with any team. The scorekeeper was getting paid by the tournament to work this. Didn't have a kid for either side. Within 10 seconds, they had to yell at the scorekeeper to add the run and didn't even say it politely. Could have walked over and done it a lot more politely and quietly. Again, it's wonder why kids talk the way they do to each other and to adults when they see this stuff going on with the adults. Overall, the coaches were way too intense. The ego is the enemy. The ego is the enemy. Coaches were way too intense. I think they should enforce or enact a rule that requires the head coaches, all the coaches, to go for a 30-minute jog with each other before the game. So when the players are warming up, for the most part, I don't see coaches doing a great job of even being there involved in the warm-ups. They're off to the side talking or chatting or talking with somebody or talking with the other coach already. I propose coaches from both teams go for a 30-minute jog before the game around the field. This would do two things. One, most importantly, it will calm them down. It will lower their stress levels. It will tire them out a little bit. They will be more relaxed. They will be less tense. Those are all really good things. Second, it would allow them to talk to each other and see that they might be really good friends if they actually chatted with each other. They might actually really be people that get along really well. Go for 30 minutes while the kids warm themselves up. Trust me, the kids can warm themselves up if you've coached them up right. Okay, now for something a little more realistic, although I'd love to see that last tip or last suggestion play out. Cutoffs being overused. These youth fields aren't that big. The left fielder throwing to third base doesn't need shortstop cutting off the ball. They get a single to them. They don't need shortstop sliding over there and being in between. Just that extra throw. This is something that's overused throughout baseball, is that cutoff man, that cutoff person, the cutoff player when it comes to routine singles, routine type of plays, typically singles to the outfield. You don't need the cutoff person to get the ball to second base when the center fielder picks up a single and they're 40 feet from second. They don't need the cutoff person. It's just, I think you should train them up, if anything, to have instead of cutting off, have a backup. Instead of cutting off, have one of the middle infielders slide around and back it up and make the outfielder throw it to the base. It's a little thing, but I think cutoffs in this case are just overused. Something I would say is hey, you get the ball, you fire it to the base. Pitcher should be backing up. The other middle infielder should be backing up. Shouldn't be a problem. The game was fast. For my nephew's team, the game was fast. It was fast for the other team, and the other team was the number one seed. They were the number one seeded team, and it was still fast. What this tells me, when I see a game that consistently looks fast to the players, that consistently is a little bit faster, it's going a little faster paced than they feel comfortable and they're ready for, it tells me that their practices are too slow. Their practices are too slow. The drills are too slow. Manipulate your drills, manufacture drills, build drills, design drills that have a fast-paced component. Maybe not the whole drill. I'm not a big fan of the entire drill just being this speedball type of thing, but I definitely think that the game needs to be slower than practice in a lot of ways. If you want the game to slow down, you don't tell players, hey, go faster. You got to speed up. You can't take so much time. Speed up practice. That's the best and really only true way to slow down the game. Speed up practice, slow down the game. If you speed up practice, that will inherently slow down the game. That's a huge competitive advantage for any of the teams in this tournament that I was watching. The game was just going fast for a lot of them, and some of the teams it was going, almost every play was a little faster than they were ready for, and that's not good. So the fly ball, they anticipated it, and they tried to get to the fly ball was a little, it went a little over their head, or a little to the side, or the runner hustling down the line sped up the infielder into making an error, or the infielder took too long, and because in practice they don't maybe emphasize the speed of it, the speed of the game, the quickness. So a couple times I saw infielders get the ball, double pump, triple pump. If you speed up practice, this won't happen. It can't happen because now in practice, they're going to be exposed. And if you expose the kids and these flaws and these slow tendencies, then when the game comes around, they're going to be ready to rock and roll. It won't be fast. Now, it's not all going to be slow motion when the game comes around. Of course not. But you're definitely overall slowing the game down by making the practices faster. And what I mean by faster, not length of practice, of course, right? I'm talking about each drill and how quick the drill moves, the speed of it, the speed of the ground ball, the speed of the runners, the speed of the pitches, the speed of whatever it is to make it go faster. You're artificially speeding up the action of the game during practice to make the game slower. I like the strict pitch count. I like that. There was a strict pitch count. I like that. That's great to see. Back when most of all of us played, myself included, there was no pitch count. It was just go out there and throw. I do like the strict pitch count. I do think that is really good. I heard Coach Tom House say recently, kids are pitching too much and throwing too little. I like that. I think kids are throwing a lot less than they used to back in the day, throwing less rocks, throwing less dirt clods, throwing less out there in the front yard with the neighbors, playing less baseball, but they're going out there and having to play as many games or pitching or even more games now, year-round games, and the two don't match up, and it's not a good result. So I do think that the strict pitch counts are a good thing overall. It's a blanket policy, and that's not always the best way, but it's a lot better than not having a pitch count, in my opinion. Umpires. Maybe umpires should have, this is if you are an umpire, if you want to make a recommendation to an umpire in your league or before a game, recommend this. Hey, umpires, let's have a bigger strike zone with less than 2 strikes, but with 2 strikes, the kid's got to be able to reach it for it to be called a strike. I saw the umpires because they knew they were going to be out there all day, and this tournament was double game elimination with 8 teams, and it was going to drag on a little bit. It's 10U. Some of the pitchers weren't throwing a lot of strikes. I don't think you reward pitchers with a big 2-strike zone in terms of the hitter still needs to be able to reach it. So you can call something with less than 2 strikes a strike, and the hitter inherently is still up there to bat. You haven't taken the bat out of their hands and told them to go sit on the bench and they're out. But when it gets to 2 strikes, umpires, and I think this is a good recommendation. I've done this. I've talked to umpires, say, hey, I don't mind you having a little bit bigger zone with less than 2 strikes, but just make sure with 2 strikes that the hitter can actually reach it, because there were quite a few instances where the pitch was a good foot to 14, 16 inches off the plate. That was called a strike. The hitters at this age, at 10U, 11, they couldn't even major leaguers probably couldn't even reach that. If they extended their bat all the way out and bent over, they couldn't have reached it. And I don't think that's fair to strike a kid out when he can't reach it. I'm all for ringing up kids on close pitches. I am all for that. I'm all for ringing them up backwards case if they're not swinging on pitches around the strike zone or even just outside of the strike zone. But I think the umpires got to understand this is something you can talk to the umpires in your league about if you are an umpire. Maybe your strike zone is a little bit bigger. Maybe you give an inch or 2 on the outside of the strike zone with less than 2 strikes, but do not give a pitch that's bouncing in the dirt or a foot outside with less than 2 strikes, because it's just not fair that the hitter is now out on a pitch they couldn't even reach. At least with less than 2 strikes, there's still more life for them to be had. So there is my takeaway, part 1 of this episode. Big time competitive advantage, big time advantage for players. You all that are listening to this and can and use this and preach it. Hitters should not go up there aggressive or patient. The pitch should dictate. They go up there with plan A and plan 2 and they execute plan A and plan 2, and they will be patient on the pitches they need to be patient on, and they will be aggressive on the pitches they need to be aggressive on. It's built into the plan. It's not a mindset. The mindset is not patience or one or the other. It's a mix. We're looking for a combination of aggressiveness and patience. But if you tell them to go up there aggressive, that's not a mix. That's telling them to be aggressive. You can't, I've never heard a coach go to, this is what you're telling them in plan A and plan 2, but definitely plan A, the 80-20 baseball plan A hitting approach. You're saying this to the hitter: go up there aggressive and patient. How many times have you heard a coach say, hitters, make sure you're patient and aggressive up there? How many times have you heard that? How many times have you heard a coach say, go up there, be aggressive and patient? Be patient and aggressive. Heck, they're not even in the batter's box when they're being told this. They haven't seen the pitch. Let the pitch dictate patience, or aggressiveness. Let the pitch location dictate it. You have to trust me on this. This is things, and I'm telling you, you come to 80-20 baseball not to hear everything that you've heard everywhere else. Of course, I'm bringing you stuff from other coaches. I'm sharing you things I've learned from other coaches. The baseball community, there's things that just flat out work that most teams, 90% of coaches are using, and there are definitely some things that are not coached correctly. And this is a big one because it's every pitch. That's why you come here to get something like this, and there it is. Also, my nephews came, hey, coaches, can we talk a little more politely to each other? Or at least can we talk a little more low-key? Don't have your hitters bunt because they can't hit unless it's a drag bunt. Don't have them just sacrifice in a non-sacrifice bunt situation just because they can't hit. That's a bad message. Bad. It's just bad in a lot of ways. Drag bunt, love it. Make them drag bunt, but umpire correcting his call. That was pretty cool to see. Hitters should have that face cheek shield. I've mentioned this before. They just get it, attach it. You can attach it or you can buy the helmet with it. Parents yelling at the scorekeeper to change the scoreboard total of runs. I don't even like the fact that they really even go over there right away, much less even a minute or two later. It's just sending the wrong message to everybody. You're all about the score and not about building better players. I'm not saying they shouldn't keep accurate score. I'm just saying I wouldn't sprint over there like that. I think that's something that shouldn't be done in that way. Coaches, 30-minute jog together before the game. 30-minute jog, build rapport with the other coach. I know I'm being a little unrealistic with this, but hey, you know what? It sounds unrealistic now, but wouldn't that be cool if coaches just did a 30-minute jog? You burn calories. Then after the game, when you have a cold one, you don't feel as bad. Plus, during the game, you're much more relaxed. Those endorphins have kicked in. And you talk to the other team about their family and what they like to do. Hey, you might both be fishermen. You might both be farming. You might both hunt. You might whatever. You might see a lot. You might be into the same music. You might both like Metallica. Next thing you know, during the game, you're calling them by their first name and you have a much better relationship, and those endorphins are keeping you relaxed. I'm telling you, 30-minute jog before the game. Cutoffs overused on basic singles. On a basic single, I have my players fire it straight to second base, and I have a guy backing up. Fire it straight into the base. They need to get used to throwing straight to the base, because when those situations do come up, when they do have to go to the gap or they go down the line and get a ball and they got to fire one that the hitter's trying to make into a double. Well, now they're ready for it. Now they're used to throwing to the bag. Like a pitcher throwing bullpens, that's their practice, getting practice throwing straight to second base or third base on the fly. Speed up practice, slow down the game. Strict pitch count, I like that. And then a little tip for umpires, just let them know, hey, umpires, I don't mind you having a bigger zone. Just make sure the hitters can hit it with 2 strikes. All right? All right, everybody, that wraps up this week's episode. I look forward to being here next week with you. I'm going to have Coach Klein's interview, the founder of Speedball. I'm going to bring that to you next week. The entire interview is going to be rolled out next Tuesday. In fact, next Tuesday, we're going to go right into the interview. I'm going to basically say, hey, what's up? Here's the interview, and we're going to let it roll. You're going to want to hear that. Coach Klein, this is somebody that's really, I think, going to really move the game forward in a lot of ways in the youth level and really make it a lot more fun. So you want to catch that. Until next week, take care of your health, take care of your family, take care of those friends, those close friends of yours, and take care of the baseball community, your kid, your players, by setting a good example and providing these strategies with them. And until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.